YouTube, welcome back to Peterson Auto. If you didn't see it already, check out my video on honing a cylinder that I did on this here cylinder for the DT360. However, now we're going to go ahead and discuss installation and removal of the cylinder. So there is the bore that the cylinder goes into. The way I got it out is there is about that much of the cylinder protruding from the bottom of the block. I just went underneath it with a jack and a 2x4, put the 2x4 in here, jacked it up, and it popped right on out. So that's not the technical way to do it, the proper way to do it. So I'm not going to cover that, but what we will do is we'll show you how you can put them back in. So we have the new O-rings in place. You just lube them up with a good bit of oil. Nice old 30 weight here works fine. Make sure they're nice and well lubricated. I'm actually going to go over this one more time before I put them in, just to make sure there's enough oil on the outside to allow them to slide nice and easy. Clean up your cylinder, obviously. Make sure it's as clean as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. If it's a new cylinder, it's already clean, but hose it down with brake clean. This seat right here is critical. You want to make sure that is very clean. And then same matching seat right here. If you look way down in here, there's a, it's gonna be hard to see, very bottom there's a matching sealing surface that the O-rings go on. So you want to go ahead and get those sealed up too, that surface. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and clean that surface up and then put a light coating of oil on it and a light coating on the O-rings. Since that surface is way down in the hole, I'm not going to be able to show you that part of the process, but we'll get a video set up here to show you everything else. Okay, YouTube, now we have the liner and we're at the engine. We've lubricated the O-rings again and lubricated the sealing surface at the bottom of the block. Go ahead, take the liner, carefully lower it into place. Now you'll feel those O-rings sitting on that sealing surface. You can go ahead and take yourself a nice wooden block and a hammer and start tapping it in. So YouTube, here's our wooden block. Our liner is now in place. Now, the other step you want to do is you want to check the cylinder protrusion. You want to use a dial indicator and go off of the head surface. Now, this is very critical on a new cylinder. When you're putting the same cylinder in the same hole, the importance becomes much less. So we're going to set up the dial indicator here. All this is a bunch of rods and little clamps. This is old school one, so it can be a little challenging. Each clamp is set up for a certain rod, and you know, it's got to be put together just right. So bear with me a minute while I do it. Okay, now we have it together. Should be doing this on a clean head surface, but I'm just doing this to give you that example so you know what to do. I'm going to clean the head gasket surface once I get the engine reassembled and check it again at that point. Okay, so you start with your indicator on your highest point of your cylinder liner, and then you rotate it until it comes off. So right there we have approximately 50 thousandths of protrusion, it looks like, which I'll have to double check it, but if I recall, this was 40 to 60 thousandths was acceptable, so that should mean we're in tolerance. The little amount of head gasket material here ain't gonna negatively or positively really affect anything, because that's maybe 2 or 3 thousandths. So, you know, we're not getting that precise here. We are measuring in thousandths of an inch, but our window is a 20 thousandths window, so as long as it fits in that window, we're good. So that looks pretty well, pretty good. Our liner is now installed. We have checked to make sure we have the proper protrusion from the deck surface, and we'll be good to go as far as putting everything back together. So the removal is pretty much the opposite of putting things back together. What we're going to wind up doing is we have the cylinder liner in. We're going to drop our piston in. After we drop our piston in, we're going to go ahead and tighten the connecting rod bolts back up, and then put the bottom end back together. So, okay, YouTube, so to put the piston in, you're going to need your piston ring compressor. By the way, this is the heavy duty bracket I built up. That was going to be the liner puller. However, the floor jack method worked fine for this particular application. So this is your piston ring compressor. Bands on the outside will tighten up and compress the rings as the piston goes in. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. Don't have to be perfect, but you want to get any old dirt and oil off of it for now. One thing to mention, I don't know if you'll see it there. Kind of see it at the top. It says cam side. That goes towards the camshaft because there's valve reliefs here to clear the valves when they go down. So something to remember. You'll need to take that into consideration. I'm going to put this in from the top. So when you're putting this in from the top, loosen this up a good bit. There we go. You want to put the tightening portion on the top. So we're going to lay it in probably roughly like that. See if that'll stay. And then the Allen key type of piece goes into here. It's actually a square key. And when you twist it, it tightens up. So after you get it roughly tight, give it a light push to square the whole assembly up. Maybe move it up a little bit in this case. Because this is band style, the bands will move on you a bit. They make other style piston ring compressors. Feel free to use them, they work just as well. This is just the cheap one that would work for this size obnoxiously large 4-inch bore piston. So go ahead and tighten it up. You really want to get as tight as you can. On the bench I can't do perfect, so now I'm going to go and put it in the engine. So when you're ready to put your piston in, you could put a piece of hose on the rod bolts to keep them from hitting the crank or causing damage there, and also help guide them in. On this particular setup, I am going to be doing that because my crank is not 100% centered right now, and I don't feel like turning the engine over because I have to do that from underneath. So remember your marking that says cam side here, YouTube. The marking that says cam side is going to go, again, towards the cam. Take your piston, slowly lower it into the cylinder. Make sure your cam side is lined up. Try to get it squared up as it should be. And then you're going to take They make specialty tools for this, but a hammer handle, good old trusty ball peen I use for everything, works great. So you take this handle, tap on the top of the piston, it'll start sliding in. In this case, I don't have it quite tight enough. Okay, YouTube, you want to install your cylinder, you want to put your crank at the bottom dead center for that particular piston. Grab yourself a nice hammer and a piece of wood, or you can use the hammer handle. So you can take the hammer handle and tap on the piston and it'll go down in. Or you could use your piece of wood, like I said. Take your piece of wood, put it in, give it a couple good taps. As you saw, the compressor moved and the piston is in place. So then after that, since it's a little dark under there, I can't quite show you. You go in there, well, you clean out any dirt you have on the piston, obviously. There's a couple little wood chips from hitting the ring compressor, which is a fairly sharp steel. But you go in there, you clean out the piston top, and you line up your crank with your connecting rod, and then you tap it the rest of the way in. After that, you've done the basics of installing the piston liner. You tighten up your rod bolts, put your oil pan back on, put your head back on, connect your turbo, your intake, exhaust, all that good stuff. You know, this isn't meant to be specific to this engine, but if you do have any specific questions, feel free to ask. I'll be glad to help. This is just showing you how to put a liner in a vehicle. If you can't get to the point where you need to do this, you probably shouldn't be doing it on your own. You should probably hire a professional. But since we had the opportunity to show you, we have showed you today. So again, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for watching Peterson Auto.